Welcome back to the Ball Does Lie podcast, your one-stop shop for weekly NBA content. I'm your host, Amir, joined by my co-host, Brendan. So, Brendan, there's a big rule in the NBA that sometimes gets overlooked. And to qualify for awards like the MVP or the All-NBA, you must play at least 65 games. And I want to talk to you about that to see if you think that's fair or not. So there's load management. There's more injuries, it seems like now. Superstars are resting in general. So does the rule make sense? Like, what are your thoughts on it? Like, are there any pros or cons, in your opinion, to it?
Yeah, I feel like there are a lot more cons than pros tied to this rule. I understand why the NBA implemented it to incentivize these guys to stay away from just doing game kind of management and taking time off and skipping games to rest up for the playoffs. But we're at the point now where 65 games seems like just such a random number, and it's affecting, I think, how we're going to look back on these seasons. I think a big reason why we're getting a push on this topic now is Jokic is, I think, right now in jeopardy of missing the 65 game mark, depending on how long he's out of injury. And if Jokic comes back and he ends up playing 63, 64 games, and that's the reason he can't win a MVP, he can't be on any all NBA teams, I think that's just a huge stain on the NBA this season. So I think there's more cons here. A lot of money on the line for these players as well, and their incentives and making these all NBA teams or winning these awards that I honestly think this year haven't had a big problem with load management, in my opinion. I think a lot of these guys are playing when they're healthy. We'll take a look at maybe the Jazz and some of their players they got to rest so they can continue tanking. But for the most part, I don't think the league is load managing their guys to a ridiculous rate. And I think the tanking conversation is a little blown out of proportion. So I'd like to see the 65 game limit removed. I think we should put more of this pressure on the reporters and the people actually watching and covering the sport to make good informed decisions on who should be all NBA, who should be in the MVP races. That's their job. And if they can't, take the context of the season and place it on how each of these players are playing, how each of these players is managing the number of games they're playing, then what's the point of having the media vote on these things? I hate the rule. I would love to see the league get rid of it. But to throw it back to you, do you see any value in these 65 games? Do you feel like this really has been a reason why a lot of these players are muscling through some of these little nicks that they're suffering through the season? Or do you think it's something we should just throw out altogether?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't love the idea of a 65 game rule. There should be a threshold maybe where you like a player plays half the season only. They play 41 out of 82. Like I can understand why you would think that person should or could be ineligible when an MVP caliber player, like maybe his counterpart played 72 out of 82, or someone played even 65, like 65 versus 41. That's very significant, right? Like the percentage of games played should play a factor. And I like the idea of the voting outweigh sometimes the games missed. But like, what do you think that number should be? Like should it be 58 and above? Like, I mean, the seven more games, what is that? Like 19 games? Because what is it right now? 17. So 65 is 17. So you're saying like give them like 22, 23. Like, do you think that makes a big difference? I think it could, depending on players, but I feel like to your point, there's less of the load management across the board like it used to be, where guys were just like you knew for a fact the Kawhis of the world, or Anthony Davis's, like the guys that are true, like guys that are. I don't think Kawhi's necessarily made out of glass. His knee is cooked, but like because usually his injury is the same injury, right? Versus AD, it's like
Yeah.
one day it's his eye, one day it's his fingernail, one day it's his back.
Right.
You never
Right.
know with players like him. He's more injury prone to everything, but you're seeing less of those guys just always missing games at this point. So I don't know what is that number. What does that threshold look like to you? Is there a minimum?
That I think that's the big question. Should there even be a number? I think altogether just get rid of the minimum requirement. And I think let's put this on the people covering the sport to make an informed decision. They watch the games, they know who's impactful, they know who's not. So once you start putting a number on minimum games required, it just starts making everything real murky. and just starts disqualifying players that I think deserve to win these awards. And for the most part, even pre the 65 game minimum threshold we now have, if you were a player that's up for MVP, up for All NBA, you're typically playing the majority of the season. I think we've had one MVP play less than 65 games, and that was Bill Walton way back when. I think he was just under 60 games, played like 58 games or something
Was he
like
on
that.
Portland when he was on Portland?
Yeah, and it's not it's I don't think it's that big of a deal if a guy plays 65 games versus 62. Like if Jokic ends up playing 64 games, we're really not going to have him listed on an
Right.
NBA team or even
Right.
have him considered for MVP. That's ridiculous,
Totally. Because watch the impact these next 4 to 6 weeks are going to have on the Denver in the standings. Because that's a good point. So if it's between Shea, Cade, whoever, Joker, but like Joker, let's say misses like the next 30 something games and only ends up playing like 40 games, then he's probably not going to actually be in that conversation anymore because of his team falling through the standings.
Absolutely.
Like that team runs like one guy, like if SGA was out, I don't want to say prolonged time, but like if SGA misses like 4 weeks versus Joker, like which team do you think is going to do worse? I think the Thunder can withstand a little bit better. They might fall a little
Absolutely.
more, but like
Yeah, the Thunder can hang on a little bit more without Shea compared to. I mean, we're going to see right now how much of an impact Jokic has on this Nuggets team, but his on-off numbers tell you everything I think you need to know.
Totally, like, and also
very different.
It's like MVP is also based on your team. Like it's like take that guy off the team. Where are they? That's a factor. Like statistics and like most MVPs come from at least the top 3 team, right? Like your team needs to be top 3 in your conference. It's very rare that you would give someone that's the 7th seed an MVP unless he's putting up like godly
First
numbers.
triple double since Oscar Robertson. Shout out my boy Russell Westbrook. But yeah, it's very unique cases for a guy that's going to win MVP that's not on, more or less a top 3 seed in whichever conference. Yeah, because they have to impact winning. And then for the All NBA conversation around the 65 games, it just would pain me to see. Let's take Kevin Durant. I don't think he's kind of in jeopardy right now of missing that threshold. So are we going to not award a forward spot to Kevin Durant, who's been playing really great basketball this year because he played 60 games, and then we're going to elevate a guy that might not be as deserving? Throw a name out there, Karl Anthony Towns or something like that, who, made the threshold, played the 65 games, was available, which matters. But when you look back on that 10 years from now, we're really going to think, oh, he was more impactful than, player A or whoever you want to put in there.
Totally.
It just doesn't seem like a right way to kind of take a snapshot of the season.
Maybe you think of it as like, because that's a great point too, because that also impacts contracts because players have to get all NBA sometimes with stipulations in their contracts to get max deals or super maxes. But maybe having like a minimum threshold versus like 65, and if you're one below that, you're disqualified. Like maybe like give, I don't know, maybe not have a number at all, but if there's kind of like a middle, maybe like they have to play 50 games and above. That's still a shit ton of games that you can miss, but like at minimum, if you're going to be all NBA, you have to have at least played 50 games. Like, because if Kevin Durant for some reason does get significantly injured and comes back and they save him towards the end of the season because he's the guy who is 37 years old, someone they signed for him to be a scorer and make that impact in the playoffs as a NBA champion, right? On a young up and coming team like the Rockets, who needed a player like him desperately last year against the Warriors in the playoffs. Yeah. What's if he only plays 48 games for some reason, still dominated statistically? His team did well. That's a team that can also, he's like the third option on this team now, right? I mean, he's probably the best scorer, but like overall, like he might be the number 2 or 3 guy on that team. I don't know, probably number 2 guy, honestly, now that I'm saying this out loud. But like, if there is another guy though that does play 67 games and Durant only played 48, like I wouldn't be upset that that guy made it over Durant. But like if he played 60 games, like come on, like that's a good amount.
Yeah,
that's a good barometer. Absolutely. Is like
that should qualify you.
60 is a solid number, but like anything maybe below 50, right? Seems like a good compromise to me. That gives him 15 more games. That's a shit ton of games. You can miss 32 games, dude. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of games, technically, right? 32, am I doing the math right? Or 31, whatever, 30? I don't know. Who cares?
But in that range, to your point, I don't know. The NBA, I think it also just proves the NBA season is too long at this point. Like everyone knows we need to shorten the season. It's never going to happen, but we need to shorten the season.
And
maybe
NFL's the opposite, baby. Sorry to cut you off. They're like, let's play the most violent sport outside of UFC and fighting, which obviously is not a
the
comparable
NFL
sport.
definitely they should have never gone over 16 games. Like
Yeah,
that,
like football's
the
trying to do the
science
opposite. They're
behind
like,
it.
let's play more games. We'll give them these weird helmets
These
to
greedy
prevent
owners and greedy
CTE.
organizations trying to squeeze as much as they can out of these
want
players. But
advertising dollars, eyeballs. That's all that
I
matters.
think another way we can maybe curb this 65 game threshold if the NBA is so adamant about having it is I think we need to have a legitimate playoff award system as well. Because I think that would also, I think the point of these awards is to really give ourselves some historical context when we're looking back on these years and see
Right.
what the hell happened in 2025-26 season. Who were the best players? Who were the most impactful players? And you risk just wiping out a lot of players' impact, or at least their historical impact, if you have that 65 game threshold. But if you need to keep that in there, then let's move. Okay, let's have an all NBA playoff team. All the teams that made the playoff that were playing in, between April to June. Here are the best players that ran in the playoffs. Here's your playoff MVP. Here's your playoff most defensive player of the year. I think that way you can at least segment, okay, these were the really, really impactful guys at the most important time of the year.
I like that.
But a lot of these are regular season awards. I understand that. But I think if we're going to have this 65 game kind of ambiguous number, I think we got to find another way to really tell the story of who mattered, who played really well, who are the best players. And you risk losing that with the 65 game minimum.
Yeah, makes sense, man. So anyway, thanks for hopping on. Appreciate the time, Brendan. If you guys did enjoy this episode, enjoy our content, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you again.